really sure if YouTube is the right place for this to be. However, I've put some videos up on TikTok and I thought maybe I should be spreading a little bit more awareness, so here we are. This video is regarding ectopic pregnancies, so if that's triggering and you've clicked on this video by accident, just go off of it. But yeah, the 1st of August is Ectopic Pregnancy Awareness Day, which is obviously fast approaching, and I think it's really important that if you have the ability to and feel you're able to, you should raise awareness for topics that you feel passionately about or that you feel need more awareness. And ectopic pregnancies is definitely something that I feel isn't spoken about enough, and I had an ectopic pregnancy back in April, didn't know really much about it, and I feel like a lot of other people don't really know what ectopic pregnancies are, how to spot them, what happens when you have one. So I thought I would quickly try and explain what an ectopic pregnancy is, what happens, etc, etc, etc. Back in April, we found out we were pregnant on the 6th of April. We obviously had a positive pregnancy test, we were very excited, we had been planning a pregnancy, and I had calculated like when my ovulation was, not just when my last period was, so I knew exactly when I had ovulated, and that can be tracked by LH strips, and I also have an Oura ring which tracks your basal body temperature every morning, and that is a really accurate way to detect ovulation. So I found out when I was around about 4 weeks and 2 days pregnant, which goes by the date of your last period up until when you find out. I booked an early reassurance scan at a local baby scanning clinic for, I think it was 6 weeks and 5 days, which was a Saturday, because you can basically get an early reassurance scan between 6 weeks and 8 weeks, and that's basically just to check that everything's in the right place. Sometimes you can detect a heartbeat from like 7 weeks onwards, etc. Because obviously your first NHS scan isn't until 12 weeks. So being our first pregnancy, being excited, wanting to make sure everything was okay, we booked that for 6 weeks and 5 days. When we went to the appointment, I had an external scan, which is like the abdominal scan, the usual pregnancy scan that you would get ultrasound. I knew that I was probably going to have the transvaginal scan, which is an internal one. I was already prepared for that. When she done the ultrasound of my stomach, she did say that although my bladder was really full, they couldn't really see anything, but it could have been too early, so I had to go empty my bladder and then we would do the internal scan, which was... I had a funny feeling that something was wrong. I'll go into that in a wee second. But anyway, we had the internal and she said there was nothing in my womb, basically. And she said it was maybe too early, and I just knew that it wasn't, because I had tracked everything. Everything was tracked within an inch of its life. I had LH strips sellotaped to a notebook by paper. I knew it wasn't too early. When I first tested positive, the line was quite faint. So this was the Saturday, which was the 4th of April. I then bled on the 5th of April, and I just thought that it was a false positive and I was getting my period. That only lasted for 1 day, so I tested again on the Monday, which was the 6th of April, and it came back positive again. The line was stronger, so I just thought maybe that was like implantation bleeding, etc. I tested every single day for a week and a half, and although the line did get darker, the digital clear blues test didn't progress. So the test still said 1 to 2 weeks when it should have been progressing 2 to 3 and 3+, and that progresses as your hormone increases. So I sort of thought something was wrong, but I didn't have any bleeding, I didn't have any pain, I didn't have any other symptoms apart from what I could only describe as slow rising HCG, which can actually only be detected by a blood test, but I had noticed that my tests weren't really progressing, so that I could sort of tell from that. When I came home on the Saturday from the early reassurance scan, I phoned the maternity unit and told them basically what had happened, but obviously because it's a private scan, they can't take that as sort of gospel, so they always tell you have to come in to be re-scanned by them. So I made an appointment for the Tuesday, so that was like another 3 days, because they had nothing available on the Saturday or Sunday, and I can't remember why I couldn't do the Monday, but anyway, I booked in for the Tuesday morning. So when I went on the Tuesday morning, they done the whole thing again, your abdominal scan, and then they done the transvaginal scan, and she said that there was nothing there basically, and going by my dates, it was a pregnancy of an unknown location. When she had another further look, there was a cyst on my right ovary and there was a mass on my left ovary, which she believed was the ectopic pregnancy. So had my bloods done and things, had to go away home. On the Wednesday I worked from home. I was to wake up and get repeat bloods on the Thursday because your HCG should double every 48 hours when you are pregnant. So went up on the Thursday and I hadn't doubled, so they said that they were pretty sure the mass on my left ovary was an ectopic pregnancy. On the Thursday I then had to decide how I wanted to terminate that pregnancy. They give you 3 options. So the first option is you can just leave it and hope that it just sort of reabsorbs into your body by itself. The risks of that are obviously that your fallopian tube can rupture, cause internal bleeding, and there is a possibility of you dying. The second option was the medical route, which is an injection called methotrexate, and that basically breaks down the pregnancy, it's reabsorbed, you can bleed, and that basically stops your pregnancy. And the third option is the surgical route, which means they basically have to do surgery on you when you are knocked out, and they potentially remove your fallopian tube. I had caught my ectopic pregnancy so early because I'd had that early reassurance scan. I had the option to choose what way I wanted to do. I went with the medical route, which is an injection called methotrexate. It is injected into your bum cheek. It is sore. Painful when it's injected. No pain afterwards. Because I hadn't had any bleeding and no pain initially, they weren't sure that it was an ectopic, but as days progressed I was having a lot of intense stabbing pain in like my left abdomen. Originally when I had phoned the early maternity unit I was getting a pain in my right side, so they thought if it is ectopic it's going to be on your right ovary. Turns out that wasn't pain, that was the cyst on my right ovary that was causing me pain, which they think was due to the hormones rising that was causing the pain. So, but as the days went on, I was getting left abdominal pain, which was obviously where the ectopic pregnancy was in my fallopian tube. I didn't really want to have it removed. This was our first pregnancy, and I was worried that if I had my fallopian tube removed and fell pregnant again, there was a possibility I could have a further ectopic pregnancy. It is very, very rare, but there is a possibility. And if I had to have that fallopian tube removed as well, I would be infertile. So, with it being our first pregnancy, with it being caught so early, I did decide to go down the medical route. I had the methotrexate on the 1st of May. They tell you you shouldn't do housework or lift anything for 2 weeks following the methotrexate because it can still rupture. You have to go and get your blood checked on day 4, day 7, and then once a week until your HCG levels reach 0. So that was mentally draining, having to go back up to the early mat unit where there's loads of pregnant ladies. Basically having to just have it dragged out is probably the biggest downfall I've seen of methotrexate. Another thing is that you're not allowed to conceive for 3 months. From the date that you get your methotrexate injection, you're not allowed to conceive for 3 months because there's not enough folate in your body, and that means that if you were to conceive, your embryo and baby could potentially develop different things wrong with it, spina bifida, etc, etc. So yeah, we're not allowed to conceive for 3 months, which is also, when you're planning, it seems like forever, but that's okay. Still got my tubes, I'm healthy, I'm okay. But yeah, the process is really long and drawn out. I am glad we didn't go with the surgical route because I wouldn't have a tube. I would only have my right fallopian tube, which loads of people can still go on to have healthy pregnancies. It just was a worry for me with it being our first pregnancy, first sort of time. I was really worried about it, so yeah. Symptoms of an ectopic pregnancy. Pain in your shoulder tip. So when I say shoulder tip, it literally means when you look round, the pain, this is your shoulder tip. So if there's pain here, that's a symptom. That sounds really silly saying like this is your shoulder tip, but I mean not pain here, not pain here, like this bit right here. Bleeding, obviously, headaches. There's a long list of different symptoms. If you go onto the Ectopic Pregnancy Trust, they'll tell you all the symptoms of an ectopic pregnancy. For me, I didn't have any symptoms, and that's what is worrying and what I want to raise awareness for, because a lot of women and girls can get fobbed off in the early stages of their pregnancy for not feeling well. I would say personally, in my experience, trust your body, basically. I didn't have any shoulder tip pain, I didn't have any bleeding, I just had tests that weren't progressing. I had an early reassurance scan, which I'm really glad I did book and pay the money for, because if we hadn't had that, I probably would have waited and there was potential ectopic pregnancy could have ruptured. And if that happens, your fallopian tube bursts, ruptures, internal bleeding, and there's a possibility that you can die. It is actually very serious. So I'm glad I booked that early reassurance scan, because I just wouldn't have known. So yeah, pain in your abdomen, bleeding. Oh, there's such a long list and I wish I could remember everything, but yeah, if you Google it, if you go onto the Ectopic Pregnancy Trust pages, they'll tell you all about it. But yeah, just obviously the early stages of your pregnancy is such like a confusing, scary time. This has not been made to like scare anyone into thinking you're having an ectopic pregnancy. I think it's like 1 in 100 people or 1 in 80 people or something. There's like a 1% of pregnancies in the UK are ectopic, and it just so happened that I was unlucky and it was me. It's really unlikely it's going to happen to you, but if it does, there's options. There's people there that people know all about it, and there's lots of videos online now. I really found comfort from girls talking about it on TikTok. So when I had my ectopic pregnancy, I did the same thing. I just had a wee chat about it, and yeah. Trying to conceive after loss is also going to be a very scary journey to navigate, and we haven't decided when we're going to start that journey yet, but that's okay because we have plenty of time. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to explain ectopics, try and raise a bit of awareness for it, and if you've got any questions at all, please let me know.